There was a time when breakfast was eggs, bacon, bread baked that morning, oatmeal cooked slow on a stove, and then, without much ceremony, it became something else. It became a box, a cartoon, a promise that you could pour your way into energy, health, and happiness. The cereal aisle appeared in American supermarkets in the early 20th century, but it didn't feel like an arrival. It felt like it had always been there. By the time most of us were born, breakfast had already been rewritten. This is about what happened when food became faster than the body that ate it. In the late 1800s, breakfast in America looked different depending on where you lived and what you could afford. For many, it was heavy. Pork, beans, bread, coffee. Working families ate what would carry them through a long day of physical labor. Wealthy families ate even more. Multi-course breakfasts, meat, eggs, potatoes, pastries. It wasn't light, it wasn't quick, and by the end of the century, there was a growing sense that all of this was too much, that the American body was suffering under the weight of its own appetite. Enter the sanitariums. These were health retreats, often religious in nature, where people went to cleanse, to heal, to reset. And in one of these places, in Battle Creek, Michigan, a man named John Harvey Kellogg was running a facility based on Seventh-day Adventist principles. Kellogg believed in bland food. He believed in digestive health. He believed that rich, stimulating foods led to moral and physical decay. And so he set about creating something that would calm the stomach, regulate the bowels, and quiet what he saw as dangerous urges. He invented flaked cereal, cornflakes. It was an accident at first. He and his brother Will were trying to make granola, but they left a batch of cooked wheat out too long. It went stale. They rolled it anyway, and it came out in flakes. Thin, crispy, digestible. It was bland by design. Kellogg didn't want it to taste like much. He wanted it to be neutral, a food that wouldn't inflame the senses. But his brother saw something else. Will Keith Kellogg saw a product. He saw that people might actually want to eat this, especially if you made it taste better. So he added sugar. John Harvey was furious. He thought sugar defeated the entire purpose. But Will didn't care. He left the sanitarium and started his own company, the Kellogg Company, and he began selling cornflakes to the American public, not as medicine, but as convenience, as something modern, as something you didn't have to cook. Around the same time, other men were doing the same thing. C.W. Post, another former patient at Battle Creek, started his own cereal company. He created grape nuts, which contained neither grapes nor nuts, and Postum, a coffee substitute. He marketed these products with health claims that weren't quite true, but weren't quite lies either. They were implications, suggestions. He called his cereals brain food. He said they cured appendicitis, malaria, loose teeth. The government eventually came after him for false advertising, but by then, it didn't matter. The industry had already taken root. What happened next was not an accident. It was a strategy. Cereal companies realized that they weren't just selling food. They were selling a new relationship with time, with labor, with the role of women in the home. The early ads didn't just say cereal was healthy, they said it was easy, that it freed women from the stove, that children could serve themselves. The message was clear. You no longer had to cook breakfast. You no longer had to think about it. You could open a box, pour, add milk, and move on with your day. By the 1930s, cereal was everywhere, and it was cheap. During the Depression, when money was tight and time was scarce, cereal made sense. It didn't spoil quickly. It didn't require skill. It didn't require fire. You could feed a family of 4 for pennies, and that practicality became part of its identity. Cereal wasn't just food. It was relief. And then came the children. In the 1950s, television arrived in American living rooms, and with it came Saturday morning cartoons. Cereal companies saw an opportunity. They began advertising directly to kids. They created mascots: Tony the Tiger, Toucan Sam, Snap, Crackle, and Pop. These weren't just characters, they were friends. They were personalities. They made breakfast feel like play. And children, who had never been targeted by advertisers in this way before, responded exactly as expected. They wanted the cereal they saw on TV. They begged their parents for it. And parents, many of whom were already buying cereal, simply switched brands. The boxes themselves became part of the experience. Bright colors, prizes inside, games on the back. You could cut out masks, send away for toys, collect cards. The cereal aisle became a place of desire, a place where children made decisions, where they felt power. And the companies leaned into that. They created entire product lines aimed at kids, sugary, colorful, coated in frosting or marshmallows or chocolate. These cereals had names like Sugar Smacks, Sugar Pops, Frosted Flakes. The sugar was not hidden, it was the point. By the 1970s, the average American child was eating cereal nearly every day, and much of it was more than 30% sugar by weight. Some brands were closer to 50%. A bowl of cereal contained as much sugar as a candy bar, but it was called breakfast. It was normalized, encouraged, poured into small bodies every morning before school. There were people who noticed: nutritionists, dentists, parent groups. In the early 70s, a group called Action for Children's Television pushed for regulation. They argued that advertising sugary cereal to children was manipulative, that it was creating habits that would last a lifetime, that it was setting kids up for obesity, diabetes, tooth decay. There were congressional hearings. The FTC considered banning all advertising aimed at children under 8 years old. But the industry fought back. They said it was a matter of free speech, that parents, not the government, should decide what their children ate. And they won. The regulations never came. What did come was a shift in language. The cereals didn't change, but the boxes did. Sugar was renamed. It became corn syrup, dextrose, maltodextrin, evaporated cane juice. The word sugar started disappearing from ingredient lists, even though the sweetness remained. Health claims appeared on the front of the box. Part of a balanced breakfast, good source of vitamins and minerals. The images changed too. Instead of cartoon characters alone, there were now fruits, milk, juice, toast. The implication was that cereal wasn't the whole breakfast, it was just one part. But in reality, for most families, it was the whole thing. And here's what's strange. Cereal was fortified. It still is. Thiamine, riboflavin, niacin, iron, folic acid. These nutrients are added because the process of turning whole grains into flakes strips most of the original nutrition away. The bran is removed. The germ is removed. What's left is mostly starch. So the companies add vitamins back in, synthetic versions, and then advertise the cereal as nutritious. It's a loop. Take something whole, break it down, add back a fraction of what was lost, call it improved. For decades this worked. Cereal was the most popular breakfast in America. It was in every home, every pantry, every school cafeteria. It was what you ate when you woke up. It was what you ate when you came home late and had nothing else. It was what you ate standing in front of the TV, or sitting on the floor, or walking out the door. It required no preparation, no cleanup, no thought. But something started shifting in the 2000s. Sales began to decline. Slowly at first, then faster. Families were eating less cereal. Millennials in particular stopped buying it. When researchers asked why, the answers were surprising. Some said it was too much trouble. You had to use a bowl. You had to use milk. You had to wash the dish afterward. Breakfast had become even faster. Granola bars, smoothies, nothing, just coffee. Some people stopped eating breakfast altogether. Others said they stopped because they finally looked at what was inside. They read the ingredient lists. They saw the sugar counts. They saw that a serving size was 3/4 of a cup, and no one ate 3/4 of a cup. They ate 2 cups, 3 cups. They saw that what they had been told was healthy was not, that the vitamins on the box didn't undo the sugar in the bowl, that their children were starting the day with a crash waiting to happen an hour later. And yet, cereal is still everywhere. The aisle hasn't shrunk, the marketing hasn't stopped. New cereals appear every year. Nostalgia brands are re-released, limited editions, collaborations with candy companies, cereals that taste like cookies, donuts, birthday cake. It's not pretending to be health food anymore. It's leaning into what it always was, a sweet, fast, engineered product designed to be easy and addictive. What happened to breakfast didn't happen by accident. It happened because a system was built, a system that valued speed over substance, profit over nutrition, convenience over care. Cereal was never just food. It was a product of industrialization, of advertising, of a culture that decided it no longer had time to crack an egg. And the body remembered, even if the mind didn't. The cravings for sugar that started in childhood didn't just disappear. They shaped taste. They shaped expectation. A whole generation grew up thinking that breakfast was supposed to be sweet, that food was supposed to come from a box, that cooking was optional, old-fashioned, unnecessary. There's no villain in this story, no single person to blame, just a series of decisions that made sense at the time, a series of innovations that solved problems and created new ones, a series of promises that something better was coming and all you had to do was pour it into a bowl. The cereal aisle is quieter now than it used to be, but it's still there, still brightly lit, still filled with faces and colors and claims, still waiting for the next person who doesn't have time, who doesn't know what else to eat, who remembers what it tasted like when they were small. This is only one chapter of a much larger story.